I never thought a simple walk through the park on an ordinary Saturday afternoon could unravel everything I believed about connection, timing, and the quiet courage it takes to be seen by someone who truly understands you. But that day, with him beside me, the world slowed down just enough for me to hear what I had been too afraid to listen to for years. This is a true story, and even now, months later, I can still feel the weight of his words settling into the spaces I didn't know were empty. Before I continue, I want to ask you something. Where are you watching this from? Which city, which corner of the world are you in right now? Drop a comment below and let me know. And if you love real-life stories about reflection, unexpected connections, and the kind of love that sneaks up on you quietly, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this with someone who needs to hear a story like this today. Your support means everything, and it helps me keep sharing these deeply personal moments with all of you. It started on a Saturday in late September. I remember the date because it was the weekend before my birthday, and I had been dreading it for weeks. Not because of the age, but because I felt like I was supposed to have more figured out by now. I was 32, living in a city that never stopped moving, working a job that paid well but left me hollow, and surrounded by people who knew my schedule better than they knew my heart. I had been feeling disconnected for months, maybe longer. Like I was watching my own life from behind a glass wall, unable to reach through and touch anything real. That morning, I woke up with a heaviness in my chest that had become familiar. It wasn't sadness exactly, more like a dull ache of exhaustion that no amount of sleep could fix. I had planned to spend the day alone, maybe reading or pretending to work on a creative project I had been avoiding for months. But then my phone buzzed. It was my friend, Mira. She had texted me the night before, asking if I wanted to come over for lunch. I had said yes, without thinking, mostly because saying no would have required an explanation I didn't have the energy to give. Mira lived in a quieter part of the city, in a neighborhood where the streets were lined with trees that actually changed color in the fall. Her apartment was in a converted brownstone, the kind of place that felt warm the moment you stepped inside. I took the train there, watching the city blur past the windows, feeling that familiar numbness settle over me. I didn't want to talk about work. I didn't want to talk about dating. I didn't want to perform the version of myself that everyone expected. But I went anyway, because staying home felt worse. When I arrived, Mira opened the door with a frazzled smile. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she was wearing an oversized sweater that looked like it belonged to her husband. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," she said immediately, stepping aside to let me in. "I completely forgot I have to run to my mom's place. She's having some kind of plumbing emergency, and my dad's out of town. I feel terrible, but I have to go right now." I felt a flicker of relief mixed with disappointment. Part of me had wanted the company, but another part was grateful for the excuse to leave. "It's okay," I said, already mentally planning my retreat back home. "We can reschedule." No, stay," she insisted, grabbing her keys from the counter. "Ryan's here. He was just dropping off some books for Dev, but he's not in a rush. You guys can hang out, or he can walk you to the park or something. I'll be back in like an hour, maybe less." Ryan. Her brother-in-law. I had met him a handful of times at family gatherings and dinners. He was Dev's younger brother, though only by a year. Quiet, thoughtful, the kind of person who listened more than he spoke. He worked as an architect, I remembered that much. He had kind eyes and a calm presence that made him easy to be around, but we had never really talked beyond polite small talk. Before I could protest, Mira was already halfway out the door, calling over her shoulder, "Ryan's in the living room. Make yourself at home." "I'm so sorry." And then she was gone, leaving me standing in the entryway with my coat still on. I walked into the living room slowly, feeling awkward and out of place. Ryan was sitting on the couch, flipping through a book. He looked up when I entered, and his expression shifted into something between surprise and warmth. "Hey," he said, closing the book and setting it on the coffee table. "Mira just abandoned you, huh?" I laughed, a small, genuine sound that surprised me.
Yeah.
Something like that. He stood up, hands in the pockets of his dark jeans. He was wearing a simple gray sweater, sleeves pushed up to his elbows, and he looked relaxed in a way I envied. "She does that," he said with a slight smile. "Gets excited about plans and then forgets she has other plans." "It's fine," I said, though I wasn't sure if I meant it. "I should probably just head out." "Or," he said, tilting his head slightly, "we could go for a walk. There's a park a few blocks from here. It's actually really nice this time of year. Unless you'd rather not, which is totally fine." I hesitated. The logical part of me wanted to decline, to go home and sink back into my familiar solitude. But there was something in the way he offered, something gentle and undemanding, that made me pause. "A walk sounds okay," I heard myself say. He nodded, grabbing a light jacket from the back of the couch. "Cool. Let's go before it gets too cold." We left the apartment together, stepping out into the crisp autumn air. The sky was a pale, washed-out blue, and the sunlight filtered through the trees in soft, golden streaks. The streets were quiet, just the occasional sound of a car passing or a dog barking in the distance. We walked side by side, not saying much at first, just moving through the neighborhood at an easy pace. I noticed things I hadn't paid attention to in months. The way the leaves crunched under our feet. The smell of wood smoke drifting from somewhere nearby. The cool breeze that brushed against my face, waking me up in a way coffee never did. Ryan didn't try to fill the silence with small talk, and I was grateful for that. It felt okay to just be, without the pressure to perform or explain. After a few minutes, he spoke. "Mira mentioned you've been busy with work." I glanced at him, surprised he knew anything about me.
Yeah.
"I guess. It's been a lot." He nodded, his gaze ahead. "That can be draining." "It is," I admitted, and the honesty in my voice caught me off guard. "I feel like I'm just going through the motions most of the time. Like I'm running on autopilot." He didn't respond right away, and I worried I had said too much. But then he said, "I know that feeling. I went through something similar a couple of years ago. It's like you're busy all the time, but you're not actually present for any of it." "Exactly," I said, relieved that he understood. "It's exhausting." We reached the park, a sprawling green space with winding paths, old oak trees, and a small pond in the center. There were a few people around, couples walking dogs, parents with strollers, an older man feeding the ducks, but it felt peaceful, not crowded. Ryan led us down a path that curved around the pond, and we fell into step together naturally. "So what do you do when you feel like that?" I asked, genuinely curious. He thought about it for a moment, his brow furrowing slightly. "I try to find something that grounds me. For me, it's usually drawing or just being outside. Something that doesn't require me to be productive or impressive. Just something real." "That makes sense," I said. "I used to write. Not for work, just for myself. But I haven't done it in a long time." "Why not?" I shrugged, feeling the weight of the question. "I don't know. I guess I convinced myself I didn't have time, or that it didn't matter." "It matters if it mattered to you," he said simply. We walked in silence for a while after that, and I let his words settle over me. It was such a simple thing to say, but it hit something deep. I had spent so long prioritizing things that looked important, work, responsibilities, other people's expectations, that I had forgotten what actually felt important to me. The path took us deeper into the park, away from the pond and into a section where the trees grew thicker, their branches forming a canopy overhead. The light here was softer, dappled and shifting as the leaves moved in the breeze. It felt like stepping into a different world, quieter and more intimate. "Can I ask you something?" Ryan said, breaking the silence. "Sure. Do you feel like yourself lately?" The question stopped me in my tracks, not physically, but emotionally. I looked at him, and he was watching me with those calm, perceptive eyes, and I realized he wasn't asking out of politeness. He genuinely wanted to know. "No," I said, the word coming out softer than I intended. "I don't." He nodded, as if he had expected that answer. "I didn't think so." "Why do you say that?" "Because I've seen you at dinners and gatherings, and you always seem like you're somewhere else. Not in a rude way, just distant. Like you're there, but not really." I felt a lump form in my throat. No one had ever said that to me before, and hearing it out loud made it impossible to ignore. "I didn't think anyone noticed." "I did," he said quietly. "I notice a lot of things." We kept walking, and I felt something shift between us. It wasn't uncomfortable, but it was deeper than before, like we had crossed some invisible line from polite acquaintances to something more honest. "What about you?" I asked, wanting to turn the focus away from myself for a moment. "Do you feel like yourself?" He smiled, a small, self-aware smile. "Most of the time."
Yeah.
"But it took a while to get here. I went through a rough patch a few years ago. I was in a relationship that wasn't working at a firm that didn't value what I cared about, and I just felt stuck. It took hitting a wall for me to realize I needed to change things." "What did you do?" "I left the firm, ended the relationship, and spent a few months just figuring out what I actually wanted. It was scary, but it was also the best thing I ever did." I envied his clarity, his courage to make those changes. "I don't know if I'm brave enough to do that." "You don't have to do it all at once," he said. "You just have to start paying attention to what feels right and what doesn't. The rest follows." We reached a bench near a cluster of trees, and Ryan gestured to it. "Want to sit for a bit?" I nodded, and we sat down together, the wooden bench cooled beneath us. From here, we could see a stretch of the park, the trees swaying gently, the sky beginning to shift into the softer tones of late afternoon. I pulled my coat tighter around me, feeling the chill in the air but not minding it. "I've been thinking about something," Ryan said after a moment, his voice careful. "And I wasn't sure if I should say it, but I think I need to." My heart quickened, though I wasn't sure why. "Okay." He turned to face me, his expression serious but open. "I know we don't know each other that well, but I feel like I see you. Not the version you show everyone else, but the real you. The one who's tired and disconnected and trying to figure it out. And I just want you to know that it's okay to not have it all together. You don't have to pretend with me." His words hit me like a wave, and I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes. I hadn't realized how much I needed to hear that, how much I had been holding myself together for everyone else's benefit. "Thank you," I whispered, my voice breaking slightly. "I mean it," he said. "You're allowed to feel lost. You're allowed to take up space and not have all the answers." I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something I hadn't expected. Kindness. Understanding. A quiet strength that didn't demand anything from me. And in that moment, I felt something crack open inside me, something that had been locked away for too long. "I don't know what I'm doing," I admitted, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. "I don't know if I'm in the right job, or the right city, or if I'm just wasting time. I feel like I'm supposed to have my life figured out by now, but I don't. And it scares me." "It's scary," he agreed. "But it's also human. You're not supposed to have it all figured out. None of us are. Then why does everyone else seem like they do?" "They don't," he said with a soft laugh. "They're just better at hiding it." I laughed too, a real laugh that felt good in my chest. We sat there for a while, not saying anything, just existing together in the quiet. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves around us, and I felt a strange sense of peace settle over me. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I had to be anything other than what I was in that moment. "Can I tell you something?" I asked, my voice tentative. "Of course. I've been feeling really alone. Not physically, but emotionally. Like I'm surrounded by people, but no one really sees me. And I didn't realize how much that was affecting me until just now." He was quiet for a moment, and then he said, "I see you." Those 3 words, so simple, so direct, hit me harder than anything else he could have said. I turned to look at him, and he was watching me with an intensity that made my breath catch. Not in a way that felt overwhelming, but in a way that felt safe. Like he was offering me something precious and fragile, and trusting me to hold it carefully. "Why?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why do you care?" He hesitated, and I could see him weighing his words carefully. "Because I know what it's like to feel invisible. And because I think you're someone worth seeing." My heart was pounding now, and I didn't know what to say. I had spent so long convincing myself that I didn't need anyone, that I was fine on my own, but sitting there with him, I realized how much I had been lying to myself. "I don't know what to do with that," I admitted. "You don't have to do anything with it," he said gently. "I'm just telling you the truth." We sat in silence again, and I felt the weight of his words settling into me, filling the empty spaces I had been carrying around for so long. The sun was starting to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the park, and the air was growing cooler. But I didn't want to leave. I didn't want this moment to end. "Can I ask you something else?" I said after a while. "Anything. Do you believe people can change? Like, really change, not just temporarily?" He thought about it, his gaze distant. "I think people can grow. I think they can become more of who they really are, if they're willing to do the work. But I don't think you have to change who you are at your core. You just have to stop hiding it." "That sounds hard." "It is," he said. "But it's worth it." I believed him. Sitting there with him, feeling the cool air on my face and the warmth of his presence beside me, I believed him. "I'm glad Mira forgot about her plans," I said, a small smile tugging at my lips. He laughed, a warm, genuine sound. "Me too." We stayed on that bench for a long time, talking about everything and nothing. He told me about his work, about the buildings he dreamed of designing, about the places he wanted to travel to. I told him about the stories I used to write, about the dreams I had put on hold, about the person I used to be before I got lost in the noise. And with every word, I felt myself coming back to life, piece by piece. Eventually, the sky turned a deep orange, and we knew we had to head back. We walked slowly, neither of us in a hurry, savoring the last moments of the day. When we reached Myra's building, Ryan stopped and turned to me. "I'm really glad we did this," he said. "Me too," I replied, meaning it more than I could express. "Can we do it again?" he asked, his voice hopeful but not pushy. "I mean, if you want to." "No pressure." I smiled, feeling something warm bloom in my chest. "I'd like that." He smiled back, and for a moment, we just stood there, looking at each other. And then, without overthinking it, I reached out and hugged him. He hugged me back, his arms steady and reassuring, and I felt something settle inside me. Something that had been restless for so long. When we pulled apart, he said, "Take care of yourself, okay?" "I will," I promised. "You too." I watched him walk away, and even after he disappeared around the corner, I stood there for a few more minutes, letting the day wash over me. Something had shifted. Something fundamental and undeniable. I didn't know what would happen next, or where this connection would lead, but for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. Over the following weeks, Ryan and I started meeting regularly. Sometimes we'd walk through the park again, other times we'd grab coffee or just sit and talk for hours. He never pushed me to be anything other than myself, and I found myself opening up to him in ways I hadn't with anyone else. He told me about his past, about the heartbreak he had endured, about the lessons he had learned. And I told him about my fears, my doubts, my dreams that I had been too scared to chase. There was something about the way he listened that made me feel heard. Not just the words I was saying, but the things I wasn't saying, the emotions beneath the surface. He had a way of asking the right questions, of gently guiding me toward clarity without ever making me feel judged or inadequate. One afternoon, we were sitting in a small cafe near the park, the kind of place with mismatched furniture and soft jazz playing in the background. It was raining outside, a steady, soothing rhythm against the windows, and the air inside was warm and smelled like coffee and cinnamon. "I've been thinking about what you said," I told him, wrapping my hands around my mug. "About becoming more of who I really am."
Yeah.
He said, leaning forward slightly, his attention fully on me. "I think I've been hiding for a long time. Not just from other people, but from myself. And I don't want to do that anymore." He smiled, a proud, encouraging smile. "That's a big step." "It's terrifying," I admitted. "But it also feels right." "That's how you know it's the right thing," he said. "The things that matter most are usually the scariest." I looked at him, at the way the soft light from the window illuminated his face, at the kindness in his eyes, and I felt my heart swell with something I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't just attraction, though that was there too. It was deeper than that. It was recognition. Like I had found someone who understood me on a level I didn't know was possible. "Can I tell you something?" I said, my voice shaking slightly. "Always. I think I'm starting to feel like myself again. And I think it's because of you." He was quiet for a moment, and I saw something flicker in his eyes. Surprise, maybe, or hope. "I'm glad," he said softly. "But it's not because of me. It's because you're finally letting yourself be seen." "You're the one who saw me first," I said. He reached across the table and took my hand, his touch warm and steady. "Then I'm honored." We sat like that for a while, hands linked across the table, the rain falling outside, and I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known I was capable of feeling. This wasn't a grand, sweeping romance. It was quiet and gentle and real. And that made it more powerful than anything I had ever experienced. As the weeks turned into months, Ryan and I grew closer. We talked about the future, about what we wanted, about the kind of lives we hoped to build. He encouraged me to start writing again, and I did, tentatively at first, but with growing confidence. He showed me his sketches, the designs he was working on, and I saw the passion in his work, the way he poured his heart into every line. We didn't rush anything. We let things unfold naturally, trusting that whatever this was between us, it was worth taking our time with. And slowly, I felt myself transforming. Not into someone new, but into a truer version of who I had always been. One evening, we were walking through the park again, the same park where it had all started. It was late autumn now, and the trees were nearly bare, their branches stark against the darkening sky. The air was cold, and our breath formed small clouds in front of us. "Do you remember the first time we walked here?" I asked. "Of course," he said. "How could I forget?" "I was so lost that day," I said, shaking my head at the memory. "I didn't even know how lost I was." "And now?" he asked, his voice gentle. "Now I feel like I'm finding my way," I said. "And it's because you helped me see that it was okay to be lost. That I didn't have to have all the answers." He stopped walking and turned to face me, his expression serious. "I need to tell you something." My heart skipped a beat. "Okay." That first day, when we went for a walk, I didn't just offer because I was being polite. I offered because I wanted to spend time with you. I had noticed you before, at family dinners and gatherings, and I always thought there was something special about you. Something real. And when Mira left, I saw it as a chance to get to know you. I stared at him, my mind racing. "You noticed me?" "I did," he said. "And the more time I spent with you, the more I realized I wasn't wrong. You're incredible. You're thoughtful and honest and brave, even when you don't feel like you are." And he paused, taking a deep breath. "I've fallen for you. Completely." Tears welled up in my eyes, and I felt my heart swell with an emotion so big I could barely contain it. "I've fallen for you too," I whispered. I didn't want to admit it, because I was scared. But I can't deny it anymore. He smiled, a wide, genuine smile that lit up his entire face, and then he pulled me into his arms. I buried my face in his chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, and I knew, without a doubt, that this was real. This was what I had been searching for all along. "I don't know what happens next," I said, my voice muffled against his sweater. "Neither do I," he said, his arms tightening around me. "But I think that's okay. We'll figure it out together." And standing there in the park, with the cold wind swirling around us and the sky turning dark above, I felt a sense of certainty I had never felt before. This was just the beginning. The beginning of something beautiful and unexpected and entirely ours. That walk in the park, the one I had almost skipped, had changed everything. It had brought me back to myself, and it had brought me to him. And for the first time in years, I felt truly, deeply alive. Months later, as I sat at my desk, writing this story, I thought about that day. About the way Ryan had seen me when I couldn't see myself. About the way he had offered me his hand and walked beside me, not trying to fix me or change me, but simply being there. And I realized that sometimes, the most profound connections happen when we least expect them. When we're vulnerable and honest and willing to be seen. That walk wasn't just a walk. It was the beginning of my journey back to myself. And it was the beginning of us. Whatever that would come to mean, I knew it would be worth it. Because he had shown me something I had forgotten, that I was worth seeing, worth knowing, worth loving. And that was a gift I would carry with me for the rest of my life. I still go to that park sometimes, alone or with Ryan. And every time I walk those paths, I remember the woman I was that day, lost, disconnected, searching for something I couldn't name. And I'm grateful to her, for showing up even when it was hard, for saying yes, to a walk she didn't think she needed. Because that one decision changed everything. If you're reading this, or watching this, and you feel lost right now, I want you to know something. It's okay. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to be perfect or impressive or put together. You just have to be willing to show up, to be honest, to let yourself be seen. Because somewhere out there, someone is waiting to see you. Really see you. And when you find them, or when they find you, everything will make sense in a way it never has before. That's what Ryan gave me. Not answers, but permission. Permission to be myself, to be imperfect, to be enough. And that, more than anything else, is what love should be. But understanding that didn't mean the journey was suddenly easy. Real life doesn't work that way. Even with Ryan beside me, I still had to face the parts of myself I had been avoiding for years. The difference was, now I didn't have to face them alone. It was a Tuesday evening in early December when everything came to a head. I was sitting at my desk at work, staring at my computer screen, feeling that familiar hollowness creeping back in. The office was nearly empty, just the hum of the heating system and the distant sound of a janitor's cart rolling down the hallway. I had stayed late again, not because I had to, but because going home to my empty apartment felt worse than staying in this fluorescent-lit prison. My phone buzzed. It was Ryan. Still at the office? I hesitated before typing back.
Yeah.
Just finishing up some things. It's almost 8. Have you eaten? I looked at the half-empty coffee cup on my desk, the only thing I'd consumed since lunch. Not yet. Come over. I'll make dinner. Something about the simplicity of that offer made my eyes sting. I didn't deserve this kindness, this consistent showing up. I had been pulling away from him over the past week, canceling plans, responding to his messages with short, distant replies. Not because I wanted to, but because I was scared. Scared that if he got too close, he'd see the parts of me that weren't healing as quickly as I wanted them to. The parts that were still broken and messy and uncertain. I don't want to be a burden, I typed, then immediately deleted it. That was exactly the kind of thinking that had gotten me here in the first place. I took a breath and wrote instead, okay. I'll be there in 30 minutes. When I arrived at his apartment, he opened the door with that same calm, welcoming expression that had become so familiar. He was wearing an old college sweatshirt and jeans, his hair slightly messy like he'd been running his hands through it. The apartment smelled like garlic and herbs, warm and inviting. "Hey," he said softly, stepping aside to let me in. "Hey," I replied, my voice smaller than I intended. He didn't push me to talk right away. Instead, he led me to the kitchen, where he had been cooking pasta. "Sit," he said, gesturing to a stool at the counter. "This'll be ready in a few minutes." I sat down, watching him move around the kitchen with easy confidence. There was something soothing about the way he worked, the way he focused on the simple task of preparing food. No rush, no stress, just presence. "You've been distant," he said after a moment, not looking at me, his tone gentle rather than accusatory. My throat tightened. "I know. I'm sorry." "You don't have to apologize," he said, stirring the pasta. "I just want to understand what's going on." I stared at my hands, trying to find the words. "I've been feeling overwhelmed. Like I'm sliding backward. And I didn't want you to see that." He turned off the stove and came around the counter, sitting on the stool next to mine. "Why not?" "Because I don't want you to think I'm not trying. Or that I'm not getting better. I don't want to disappoint you." He was quiet for a moment, and then he reached over and took my hand. "You could never disappoint me. This isn't a performance. You're allowed to have bad days. You're allowed to struggle. But I feel like I should be past this by now," I said, my voice breaking. "You helped me so much. You showed me that I could be myself. And I thought that would fix everything, but it hasn't. I still feel lost sometimes. I still feel like I'm not enough." "That's because healing isn't linear," he said, his thumb tracing gentle circles on the back of my hand. "You're not going to wake up one day and suddenly have it all figured out. It's a process. And some days are going to be harder than others. But that doesn't mean you're failing." Tears spilled down my cheeks, and I didn't try to stop them. "I'm so tired of feeling this way." "I know," he said, pulling me into his arms. "I know you are." I cried into his shoulder, letting out all the frustration and fear I had been holding inside. And he just held me, steady and patient, not trying to fix me or make it better, just being there. And somehow, that was exactly what I needed. When I finally pulled back, my face was blotchy and my eyes were swollen, but I felt lighter. "Thank you," I whispered. "Always," he said, brushing a strand of hair away from my face. "Now come on, let's eat before the pasta gets cold." We sat at his small dining table, eating and talking about nothing in particular. He told me about a project he was working on, a community center he was helping to design. I told him about a story idea I'd had, something I was thinking about writing. The conversation was easy, comfortable, and I felt the tension in my chest slowly unwind. After dinner, we moved to the couch, and he put on a movie neither of us really watched. I curled up against his side, his arm around me, and I felt safe in a way I hadn't in a long time. "Can I ask you something?" I said during a quiet moment. "Of course. Why do you stay? Even when I push you away?" He was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. "Because I see the whole picture. Not just the hard moments, but everything. And I think you're worth it. All of it." I looked up at him, and the sincerity in his eyes made my heart ache. "I don't know what I did to deserve you." "You don't have to deserve love," he said simply. "You just have to accept it." Those words settled into me, filling the cracks I had been trying to patch up on my own. I realized then that I had been approaching this all wrong. I had been trying to become someone worthy of love, when what I really needed to do was believe that I already was. "I'm going to try," I said. "To accept it. To accept you." He smiled, pressing a kiss to the top of my head. "That's all I'm asking." Over the next few weeks, I made a conscious effort to let Ryan in, even when it was uncomfortable. I told him when I was having a bad day instead of pretending everything was fine. I let him see me without makeup, without the carefully constructed facade I usually wore. I showed him my writing, the messy first drafts I had always been too embarrassed to share. And every time I did, he responded with the same steady acceptance that had drawn me to him in the first place. But it wasn't just about letting him in. It was also about learning to be there for myself. I started going to therapy, something I had resisted for years because I didn't want to admit I needed help. I started writing regularly again, not because I had to produce something perfect, but because it felt good to put words on a page. I started saying no to things that drained me and yes, to things that filled me up. And slowly, gradually, I started to feel like I was building a life I actually wanted to live. One Saturday morning in late January, Ryan and I went back to the park. It was cold, the kind of cold that made your breath visible and turned your cheeks pink, but the sun was shining, and the sky was a brilliant, cloudless blue. We walked the same path we had walked that first day, and I marveled at how different everything felt now. Do you remember what you said to me that first day? I asked, my hand tucked into his. Which part? You said I was allowed to feel lost. That I didn't have to have all the answers. I remember, he said. I think I'm starting to believe that now, I said. Not just intellectually, but really believe it. And it's changing everything. He squeezed my hand. I can see that. You seem lighter. I feel lighter, I admitted. I still have hard days, but they don't consume me the way they used to. And I think a lot of that is because you taught me that it's okay to not be okay. You taught yourself that, he said. I just reminded you. We stopped at the same bench where we had sat that first day, and we sat down again, side by side. The park looked different in winter, the trees were bare, the grass was brown, and there was a thin layer of frost on everything, but it was still beautiful. Still peaceful. I've been thinking about something, Ryan said after a moment. What's that? I've been offered a position at a firm in another city. It's a really good opportunity, and it's something I've been working toward for a long time. My heart sank. Oh. But, he continued, turning to face me, I'm not going to take it. I stared at him. What? Why not? Because my life is here. You're here. And I don't want to leave. Ryan, you can't give up an opportunity like that for me, I said, panic rising in my chest. That's not fair to you. It's not about fairness, he said calmly. It's about what I want. And what I want is to be here, with you, building a life together. The job is great, but it's not worth losing this. But what if you regret it? I asked, my voice shaking. What if you resent me for it? I won't, he said with absolute certainty. Because this isn't a sacrifice. It's a choice. And it's the right choice for me. Tears filled my eyes, but this time they were tears of gratitude and overwhelming love. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, he said, pulling me close. Just be here with me. I wrapped my arms around him, holding on tight, and I felt something shift inside me. This was what partnership looked like. Not grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but quiet, steady choices. Showing up for each other, day after day, even when it was hard. I love you, I said, the words spilling out before I could second-guess them. He pulled back just enough to look at me, his eyes shining. I love you too. I have for a while now. We kissed then, soft and slow, and I felt the world fall away. There was just us, in this moment, in this place where it had all begun. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that this was where I was meant to be. The months that followed were some of the happiest of my life. Ryan and I moved in together that spring, finding a small apartment with big windows and a view of the park. I left my job and took a position at a nonprofit that aligned more with my values, even though it paid less. Ryan continued his work, pouring his heart into projects that mattered to him. We built a life that felt authentic, filled with quiet mornings and long conversations, and the kind of intimacy that comes from truly knowing someone. But more than that, I built a relationship with myself. I learned to listen to my own voice, to trust my own instincts, to believe that I was enough just as I was. And that foundation, that sense of self-worth, made everything else possible. One evening, almost a year after that first walk in the park, Ryan and I were sitting on our couch, a blanket draped over us, watching the sun set through the window. The sky was painted in shades of pink and orange, and the light filled our apartment with a warm glow. Do you ever think about how different things could have been? I asked, my head resting on his shoulder. What do you mean? If Mira hadn't forgotten about her plans that day. If you hadn't offered to go for a walk. If I had said no. He thought about it for a moment. I think we would have found our way to each other eventually. Maybe not that day, but someday. You really believe that? I do, he said. I think some people are meant to find each other. It's just a matter of timing. I smiled, feeling a deep sense of contentment settle over me. I'm glad it was that day. Me too, he said, pressing a kiss to my temple. As the sun dipped below the horizon and the room grew darker, I thought about the woman I had been a year ago. Lost, disconnected, afraid to be seen. And I thought about the woman I was now. Still imperfect, still figuring things out, but no longer hiding. No longer afraid. Ryan had given me so much, his patience, his understanding, his unwavering belief in me. But the greatest gift he had given me was the courage to give those things to myself. To believe that I was worth the effort, worth the love, worth the life I was building. And as I sat there with him, in the home we had created together, I realized that this was what happiness looked like. Not perfection, but presence. Not having all the answers, but being willing to ask the questions. Not being fearless, but being brave enough to be vulnerable. That walk in the park had been the beginning. But this life we were building, this love we were nurturing, this person I was becoming, this was the continuation. And it was more beautiful than anything I could have imagined. Sometimes I still go back to that park, alone, just to walk and think and remember. I sit on that same bench and watch the world go by, and I feel grateful. Grateful for the courage to show up that day. Grateful for Ryan's willingness to see me. Grateful for the journey that brought me here. And I think about all the people out there who are feeling the way I felt, lost and alone and uncertain. And I want them to know that it gets better. Not all at once, and not without effort, but it does. You just have to be willing to take that first step. To say yes to the unexpected. To let yourself be seen. Because on the other side of that vulnerability, on the other side of that fear, is a life more authentic and fulfilling than you ever thought possible. A life where you don't have to pretend or perform or hide. A life where you can just be. And that, I've learned, is the greatest gift you can give yourself. So if you're watching this, if you're listening to this story, and you're feeling lost right now, I want you to know something. You're not alone. And you don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to keep showing up. Keep being honest. Keep letting yourself be seen. Because somewhere out there, someone is waiting to see you. Really see you. And when that happens, everything changes. It did for me. And it can for you too. 2 years later, on a crisp autumn day that reminded me of that first walk, Ryan and I got married in that same park. It was a small ceremony, just close friends and family, surrounded by the trees that had witnessed the beginning of our story. Mira was there, of course, laughing about how her forgetfulness had brought us together. And as I stood there, holding Ryan's hands and looking into his eyes, I felt a sense of completeness I had never known was possible. We wrote our own vows, and when it was my turn to speak, I said, "You taught me that love isn't about being perfect. It's about being present. It's about showing up, even when it's hard. It's about seeing someone fully and choosing them anyway. And I choose you, every single day, for the rest of my life." And he said, "You taught me that the bravest thing you can do is be yourself. And I promise to always see you, to always support you, to always remind you that you are enough. Today, tomorrow, and always." As we kissed, with our loved ones cheering and the leaves falling around us like confetti, I thought about how far I had come. From that lost, disconnected woman to this person standing here, fully present, fully alive, fully loved. And I knew that this was just the beginning of another chapter. One filled with more walks in the park, more quiet evenings on the couch, more moments of vulnerability and growth and deep, abiding love. Because that's what life is. Not a destination, but a journey. And I was so grateful to be on this journey with him. That walk in the park changed my life. But it was what came after, the courage to keep showing up, the willingness to keep being seen, the commitment to keep choosing love, that transformed it. And I wouldn't change a single moment. Not one.